A year ago, there seemed to be a constant reminder that something wasn't right in the way in which people of color were being treated. The largest healthcare system in New York City could not avoid those issues, nor, as we began to think and talk about them, were we immune from issues around inequities. The leadership agreed that we should bring a group together and begin to examine how we were doing in that space and to have a deep conversation with a broad representation of our health system staff, how we could ultimately become an anti-racist healthcare system and a more equitable healthcare system for our patients and also for our staff, and to offer some recommendations and how we could be better. And that really was the beginning of a task force. The work of the task force began July of 2020. The expectations of task force members was that they would be brave, honest, authentic, and sharing how we were doing. And so we created a space to allow for pretty open dialogue, and then to be creative in thinking about what we could be. I tell you, personally, I had my tough moments. People were dying around us, and disproportionately. Friends and parents of friends. That made it personal and was tough. But then, when the work had to get done, we came together. I have yet to meet a person who works here at Mount Sinai who doesn't come here to play a valuable role, a recognizable role in making us great at what we are. A North Star is to become an anti-racist healthcare system, probably the first that could do that, and we are well positioned for that. The roadmap will help to get us there.
For every person of color, there comes a moment in time where they come to that realization where a switch is flipped, right? Something happens that makes them aware that they're different, right? Who are you? Where are you?
When my parents immigrated, they were living in Crown Heights, and that's where I grew up. Then we moved over to Canarsie in Brooklyn.
I went to PS 120 in Flushing. Then we moved to Central Western Pennsylvania, and what a change.
Went from a whole neighborhood of black kids and minorities to coming to a new neighborhood where it was just white kids in the classroom.
We were the only minority family in the entire high school, and there were very few persons of color throughout the entire community in Central Western Pennsylvania.
They looked where you came from, and they looked and they saw you were black, and they thought you could never be as smart as you were, but you were.
So I saw firsthand how people approached someone who was new to them. And I first felt the stings of racism.
Every newsreel, every social media scroll of a video was another hit of a reality that maybe I don't belong in this country.
I had my moment where I figured, that this cause is bigger than any one thing.
Why are we painted to be so many things that I feel like are very contrary to who we actually are as human beings? And I often wonder, does anyone see our humanity?
I found myself actually joining one of those marches. I'm walking shoulder to shoulder with complete strangers. It was something I needed to do for myself and a little for my family as well.
It's all there. I mean, the anger, the disappointment, and the constant burden of what it means to be Black in America.
Julian is black, white, Cuban. He's also Filipino because I'm Filipino, and he's also German and French and everything because his father is. I have a lot of trepidation and a lot of fear because I'm afraid that at some point in the future, somebody will judge him for what he looks like.
As a person of color, I think the moments that have stayed with me the most over the last year is seeing mothers and fathers have to bury their children, seeing the pain on their faces as, they have to sit there and ask, why my child? As a father, as a husband, I would never want to be in that pain.
You've been holding your own breath for so long.
I always have a little voice in the back of my head that is always sort of monitoring and checking.
It doesn't matter that I am professor in a very prestigious institution, that I am highly regarded in my field for the research that I've done and acknowledged in certain ways. Sadly, practically every day I'm reminded that, quote unquote, I'm nothing.
There's that fateful moment where I walk into the exam room for the first time and I don't look like what they think I sound like over the phone. And it's clear they were expecting a white man and all of a sudden they have me.
And that is simply the way it works in this country. Can we change that? I hope so.
During the pandemic, my mother-in-law died of COVID, and within weeks, my father died. So my children lost 2 grandparents within a few weeks. COVID put the disparities and the inequity right on your face. You could not look the other way. You cannot ignore. You cannot pretend. That fact really created something like an awareness and a awakening in people to say, no, this is not okay.
It is impossible not to be angry at the injustice and the unfairness, but you have to learn to channel the anger into constructive action.
I think this is a really important moment. I think that Mount Sinai really took it upon itself to name racism, and the task force was kind of a culmination of that.
A lot of the most impactful changes with diversity have been seizing moments. And this was a moment that Mount Sinai seized to say, you know what, we want to be an anti-racist institution. What's the first step to doing that? And I believe the task force in that moment was a key start.
What excites me most about its creation is that it's being created.
My reaction when a task force on racism was formed at Mount Sinai was jubilation.
I thought it was a brilliant idea for a roadmap on how we can sort of achieve certain goals that we had been talking about for years.
Every aspect of the Mount Sinai health system is going to be examined so that we can dismantle whatever racist structures have been embedded within us as a result of being part of this society.
Mount Sinai could not miss this moment.
Part of this work is to be able to lean into the discomfort and to engage conflict, because that's where, we get to the learning, we get to really a deeper understanding. It's bringing these disparate efforts that have happened across the health system and really thinking about it in terms of, so what's our collective impact?
It's so important that the task force really appreciates that the experience of every Mount Sinai professional is not the same, that we have seen that equality has not existed at every level in terms of variety of things.
I think the number one question is inclusion. Does everyone at Mount Sinai feel included?
How do you hire for the right person without taking any bias?
What I was hoping to bring to the table as a member of the task force was the education perspective, trying to think about who we recruit to medical school, how we teach them, what kinds of careers we support them to go into, what that experience is like of being a medical student at this institution, in this city, in this moment in history.
I think it starts with training students to think about these things and think about what some of the causes of health inequity are, and being able to recognize that in their day-to-day.
How do we open up our scientific community to more people of color in research? We need people who are asking questions for communities that they have seen firsthand.
Does everyone feel comfortable with saying exactly how they feel? Does everyone feel like they have a say-so?
I think for me, the most exciting thing about the opportunity to participate in this task force is being able to bring those concepts of equity into our daily practice.
My message to the Mount Sinai family is to never lose sight of this mission, which includes treating every individual with respect and kindness. This is who we are, and we are committed to constantly improving in all ways.
If the goalposts are here right now, I say shoot for the moon. Let's place them another 20 yards.
But I'm excited because it's going to set lofty goals for every single one of our people, and everyone can make a difference. And that to me is a very exciting thing. It gives people a mission and purpose that's greater than the individual, mission and purpose that everyone has.
One of the reasons why Mount Sinai is such a special place, because we can look at these issues across a wide variety of vectors and actually drive real change because we're looking at it in such a comprehensive way.
I think since joining the task force, one of the biggest questions I've asked myself is, am I doing enough? One of the biggest questions I have right now is, how much can I put into this work? How much is it that I still need to learn? But the greatest thing about it is I'm willing to do the work, and I'm excited to get started.
When you feel like you're being treated fairly and you have fair opportunities as everyone else, you walk a different way, you talk a different way, and you're able to have these conversations and interactions with not only the staff, but the patients and people that you're interacting with.
I would say what I learned and what I took away from the task force is that change doesn't come easily, but it can come.
I think the task force recommendations, when Sinai implement them, is going to help Mount Sinai be a stronger institution.
I'm really proud to work at Mount Sinai.
So as we think about the task force, what inspired you to create it?
I felt that, we at Mount Sinai needed to be at the cutting edge and being a role model for issues related to equity in all aspects of what we do, in the way we deliver care, in the way we treat our employees, the way we recruit faculty. At every level, I wanted to look at how we are doing things related to equity in healthcare, develop a roadmap for us, and to implement that roadmap going forward.
Fighting discrimination has been in the fabric of Mount Sinai since our founding in 1852. It's at the core of what Mount Sinai is all about. This is an important step in creating a more fair, just, and equitable community for our staff, patients, and students.
So what excites you the most about the roadmap and the information that's been set forth?
Well, since our beginnings, we have been rooted in serving all our communities, but especially those ignored, oppressed, or biased against. The task force set out to answer a very complex and important question in healthcare. Why is there racial inequality in this country when it comes to health outcomes?
Mount Sinai prides itself on delivering outstanding care, compassionate care to everybody that comes into our doors, no matter what their background is. And that is one of the issues that the task force raised, one of the challenges for us, and we're going to meet that challenge. And we took on that as an issue early in the pandemic by establishing an Institute for Health Equity Research, because we wanted to find out, and we are going to find out, why that occurs, and we're going to do something about it.
We know we have to think big and we need to be expansive. What is the charge in our moral obligation obligation to our employees, our patients, our students, our faculty, and our community?
That's a good question because you mentioned a moral obligation. And it is a moral obligation. You know, how could we be a medical school and a health system that we're proud of if we're not taking on the task of making sure that everybody gets the great care and our communities of color are represented well by our health care system? It's a moral obligation. We got to do it.
The roadmap is neither a beginning nor an end. It's simply a next step in a decades-long movement. Our charge is to become an anti-racist and equitable healthcare institution that intentionally addresses all forms of racism and creates greater diversity, inclusion, and equity for our workforce and for those we serve.
The task force, by the work it did, and it's still doing, by the way, the task force did a great job in identifying the most important issues, that we're going to take on those recommendations as a moral imperative going forward.
If you were to just kind of wrap this up with a message to the organization, what would that message be to bring us all together?
The message from me is that we're going to do the right thing. You can't go wrong by doing the right thing. So we're going to do the right thing.
Honestly, if nothing else, I would hope that we're able to listen to each other today. This work is not easy. We will need everyone engaged in this work. It's not solely the job of any one person or department. It must be embedded in the work of every member of our Mount Sinai family.
Thank you.